The chair recognizes the honourable member for Kalani.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I have 2 hours and it's very late and I'm approaching my bedtime, I think I would be very, very brief. Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the great constituency of Kalani to make my presentation on this 2010-2011 budget. I'd like to thank the people of Kalani for giving me this opportunity again to speak on their behalf in this honorable chamber. But, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the Right Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, the Honorable Hubert Alexander Ingram, for his courage in presenting a budget that is reflective of the realities of the national economic situation and that refused to defer difficult decisions for future generation of our leaders in the future. The 2010-2011 budget, Mr. Speaker, sensitizes the public to the harsh economic times that we are facing and made an urgent and immediate call for sacrifice, service, and reform from all citizens. The Prime Minister and his government, Mr. Speaker, have led by example in that the Prime Minister himself has taken a 16% salary cut. Each cabinet minister, Mr. Speaker, had subsequently taken a 7.3% salary cut, and the Leader of the Opposition himself a 5% salary cut. Many of the senior personnel has taken a 50% salary cut in terms of responsibility allowance, and Mr. Speaker, I can say that as a member of Kalani, I endorse these cuts. Today, the government has to provide more services for more people from diminished revenue. So consequently, Mr. Speaker, it is necessary to increase some taxes to fund those increases in services that the government has to provide. But in spite of the decrease in revenue that we see today, the government still continues to provide the funds necessary to ensure that we have an excellent health care system within our Bahama land. At the recent World Health Assembly meeting in Geneva, Switzerland last month, time and time again, speakers emphasized the importance of sustaining investments in health. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, although the impact of the financial crisis on health is noted, and the 2010-11 budget imposes necessary fiscal discipline on citizens of this country, priority spending will continue and continues to be given to health. Mr. Speaker, in the 2010-11 fiscal period, $223,372,876, or 14.4% of the current budget, had been allotted for health services, and health has been identified as one of the 3 areas of priority spending. The Right Honorable Prime Minister, in his budget presentation to Parliament and the nation, explained why the upcoming fiscal period public resources must be managed judiciously and prudently within the limits he outlined. He also issued a clarion cry for service excellence and behavioral changes to improve the quality of life for our people. Mr. Speaker, this budget tries to protect the debt-GDP ratio. As we know that by the end of June this year, we expect the debt-GDP ratio to have risen from 47.3 to about 49.2. And Mr. Speaker, it's essential to maintain a low debt GDP ratio, because the higher that debt rises, the more difficult it is for one to borrow. And many individuals, be they in Farm Road, Baintown, or whatever, knows about borrowing. At one point in time, they would have had to borrow money. So you can imagine that you reach a state where in order to borrow, you must now pay back 50, 80, 100% interest. Mr. Speaker, no individual who borrows today, be it for survival, be it for food, be it for TV or whatever, even for car, no individual would want to pay back an interest rate of 100% or more. And the higher the GDP rises, the debt GDP rises, the more interest rate one pays. So you can imagine if you as an individual pay such interest, such high interest, would you not want a government that would protect your country so that your country do not fall in that category where they would not be able to borrow? Now, Mr. Speaker, many spoke about the harsh situation and the harshness of this particular budget that we've implemented here. But, Mr. Speaker, when you look at what is occurring throughout the world at other countries, they are no exception, Mr. Speaker, and in fact, some are even worse. When you look at some of the European countries, the public service or its citizens had taken a 5% salary cut. Programs for the elderly who has been the foundation of our society, who has built this country up to where we are today. Programs for the elderly had been cut. Programs for medication, what we talk about, prescription drug medication, those programs throughout some of the European countries had been cut. But yet today, we continue and are moving towards providing medication for our citizens. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at what is happening throughout Europe and other parts of the world versus the mild nature of what we have done, would you truly consider this severe when compared to the rest, but yet we protect our debt GDP ratio? Mr. Speaker, in other parts of the world, austerity measures have been severe. That freezing of pension has taken place. And Mr. Speaker, I think the budget presentation here, I think, is an excellent one. The Bahamas, when compared with other debt GDP ratio, the average debt GDP ratio in Europe itself is 74%. So imagine how difficult it would be for those countries to borrow. Yet ours, at the end of this month, we expect to be about 49.2%. Is that not excellent management, Mr. Speaker? When one look at other countries, Greece, the GDP ratio there is the debt to GDP ratio there is 115%, which means Greece would have extreme difficulty in borrowing and maintaining its social services tomorrow. But yet, the Prime Minister has introduced a program to protect our debt GDP ratio so that each and every Bahamian, regardless of where he or she lives, Baintown, Farm Road, or whatever, would be able to borrow so that if he were to fly to Miami, he can go to Royal Bank and borrow and still pay back at a reasonable rate. Is that not excellent management, Mr. Speaker? I say yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I continue my presentation, I would like to thank the staff of the Ministry of Health and the Public Hospital Authority who had worked, the Public Hospital Authority, which includes Princess Margaret Hospital, Sandlands Rehabilitation Center, and Rand Memorial Hospital, who had worked tirelessly and diligently in assisting me with the compilation of the information here that I present here tonight. As a ministry, Mr. Speaker, each and every one of us work hard together. And I look at our ministry, each individual is just as important as the other.